Welcome back to the Cumbie Show. We tell like it is, we don't care how you feel, and we have another 2026 schedule preview, breakdown, and prediction video to get to today. I've already done a handful of other SEC teams, so if you are interested in checking those out, go to my channel. They'll be there. But today we got none other than the South Carolina Gamecocks, and they are coming off a horrible 4-8 season. They went 4-8 overall, 1-7 in the SEC. They were only able to find a way to beat Kentucky last year. They beat SC State, South Carolina State, Coastal Carolina, Virginia Tech to start off the season, and they found a way to beat Kentucky. But huge step back from the previous 2024 season where they went 9-4. Just an absolute abysmal season last year for the Gamecocks. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't expect South Carolina to come out here and go 10-2 every year, 9-3 every year. You know, I expect them to be a middle-of-the-pack SEC team, a middle-of-the-pack college football team, 6-6, 7-5, 8-4 in a really good year. But coming off a horrible season. And it was strictly their offense. Lenore Sellers had a horrible season. No offensive line, the worst offensive line in the SEC. Probably one of the worst offensive lines in all of college football last year. So brutal season last year. Kind of surprised Shane Beamer was not let go in the offseason after that performance that they had last year. He does stay on as head coach. I will give him credit. He saw where the big issue was, and he went out and he tried to fix it. He is bringing on a new offensive coordinator, Kendall Briles. I think is how you say his last name, Briles, Briles. He comes from TCU, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure if this is a good hire. Didn't know anything about him. Didn't know his name before he got picked up out of South Carolina. I looked him up, did some research. His numbers at TCU, his stats were okay. There were nothing to write home about. So I am curious to see if it is going to get South Carolina back on track and where they need to go, because they need a lot of help on that offensive side of the ball. So new offensive coach, offense coordinator, practically an entire revamped new offensive coaching staff. Like I said, new offensive coordinator, new offensive line coach, I think a new wide receiver coach. It basically revamped the whole thing Shane Beamer did in the offseason. Clayton White, defensive coordinators, and they bring on 25 transfers from the transfer portal. So that's a little bit about last year and their new thing. When Shane Beamer got hired, he got hired in 2021 for the South Carolina Gamecocks. He took over after Will Muschamp went 2-8 in 2020, the COVID year, and he immediately 2021 went 7-6, looking good. You thinking, dang, new head coach went 2-8 last year, come in his first year, go 7-6, win a bowl game, and then 2023 he goes 8-5, more improvement. You're like, sitting good. Big of a step back in 2023. They do go 5-7. I will give them credit in 2023. That was probably one of the most hardest schedules I have ever seen. Even with as hard of a schedule as it is, they found a way to get to 5 wins, and they were competitive in every single game. That's what I didn't like about this season, is that they weren't very competitive. Now, they were competitive against Alabama, and they did have a heartbreaking loss to Alabama this year, but 2023 was a tough year. Then in 2024, they had a breakout year where they went 9-4. You're thinking, okay, got things back on track. We've kind of fixed our issues from the previous year. A freshman quarterback coming in, his numbers are good. Nothing crazy, but they're good. Maybe he can progress and get better to a sophomore year. And then a huge regression from 2024 to 2025. Like I said, they went 4-8, 1-7, 4-8 overall, 1-7 in the SEC, and a lot of it did have to do with the offense. So their spring game. Let's talk about the spring game. They didn't have one. They had what's called their Garnet and Black Spring Fest, where they did have Darius Rucker headline in a concert. Fun fan engagement. I love that. But if you've watched any of my videos on this topic, you know how I feel about a school not having a spring game. I absolutely hate it. I hate we're getting away from that. I'm not going to spend too much time on that in this video. I think it's stupid. So not really a whole lot to pull from their spring game. Obviously, they did have spring practice like usual, like every other team. And one thing we do know going into this season is that they are returning. They have 10 returning starters, and they are at 10 key positions. You've got Dylan Stewart as your edge rusher, Nick Harbor as your wide receiver, and then obviously Lenore Sellers returns as your starting quarterback. Look, he had a horrible year last year. There's no sugarcoating it. It's no secret that he did not perform well. Huge regression, like I said earlier in the video, huge regression from the 2024 to the 2025. I was looking at numbers of him last season compared to 2024, and in every single category that I could find, there was a drop-off. There was a regression. He went from a 65 completion percentage in 2024 to a 60% completion percentage in 2025. Less yards per total yards on the year, less average yards per pass, less touchdowns, more interceptions. Even in the running game, in the rushing per yard, he had 674 yards in 2024 with 7 touchdowns. This past season, in 2025, 270 yards with only 5 touchdowns. That's what, 400 yards not accounted for. Just lost that. Not good. Typically, we see a quarterback's biggest regression or progression, my bad, is in their freshman to sophomore year. That really tells a lot which way a quarterback is going and if he's going to be good. So the fact that we saw this type of regression with Lenore Sellers is a major red flag and a huge concern if I'm a Gamecock fan. One other crazy stat that I saw was 42 sacks. This man was sacked 42 times last year. When I saw that, I had to double check. I had to go to a separate website just to confirm, like, is that true? Because that is crazy to me. How do you get sacked 42 times? And a lot of it is horrible offensive line. Horrible offensive line play, not a good offensive scheme at all. And just also on Lenore Sellers himself, just holding on to the ball too long, making dumb decisions when he's in the pocket. So crazy, crazy, crazy number, 42 sacks. And the fact that he regressed in every single category, again, like I said, is a major red flag for me, and it's a concern. I'm not going to put it all on him. I've already said enough about the poor offensive line play and the offensive scheme that they had last season. Like I mentioned, I do give Shane Beamer a little bit of credit. He did go out. He basically revamped the entire offensive side, new OC, new O-line coach, everything. So we will see if that improves in the 2026 season. They did also bring in 25 transfer portals. A lot of that was heavily focused on the offensive side of the ball, specifically that O-line. So we'll see how that goes. But that's a little bit about last year, what they bring back from last season, and a little bit about their spring practice. What are my questions going into this season? Well, for starters, the biggest one is, can Lenore Sellers take a step forward? That is the biggest question. This team is not going to get anywhere if he cannot progress in any way. That's the biggest question, plain and simple. And also, my second one, which is also just as important as that, is can this O-line improve? Can they buy him time in the pocket? Can they have a better offensive scheme? And someone else, whether it be a running back, wide receiver, can somebody else on this offensive line step up around Lenore's and help him out? Those are my two biggest questions going into the season. And my third and final one going into the season is this Shane Beamer's last year's head coach for the Gamecocks? Very well possibly could be. If he comes out and he has another 4-8 season, or even worse, do you let him go? It probably is time. Do you give him another year with a new offensive staff and, try and get that going? So those are my three questions for this team going into 2026. Can Lenore Sellers improve? Can the O-line get better? better scheme, better anything? Can anyone step up and help him out? And is this potentially the last year that we see Shane Beamer as the head coach for the South Carolina Gamecocks? So let's jump into it. Let's get into the schedule. What I'm going to do is run through the schedule. It's what I do in every video. I'll run through the schedule, give the dates, who they're playing, and then after I'll give my takeaways and then my prediction. So they get things kicked off on September 5th against Kent State. Home game, obviously. They got 2 back-to-back cupcake teams. They're on the 12th. They play Townsend again at home. Both of those teams, I expect South Carolina to win. Then their first SEC matchup is at home. So they got 3 home games in a row. They're on September 19th, Mississippi State. A very good SEC opponent to start things off with. If you had to choose to have your first SEC opponent, you'd want it to be at home against Mississippi State. Then immediately after that, they do go on the road on the 26th to take on Alabama. That's going to be a tough game. But then they are back home on October 3rd to take on Kentucky. And then they go on the road before their bye week, October 10th, to take on the Florida Gators. So that's first half of the season. On October 17th, you do have your bye week. So coming out of the bye week on October 24th, you're back home taking on Tennessee Volunteers. After that, you do go on the road on Halloween, October 31st, to take on Oklahoma. Then you're back home on November 7th, the last month of the season, to take on Texas A&M. Then on the road on the 14th to take on Arkansas. Then the week after that, on the 21st of November, you take on my Dogs. There, it is a home game for you. And then, as always, to finish out the regular season, November 28th, you take on Clemson. It is a road game. You're playing at Clemson. So that is the schedule, the 2026 schedule for South Carolina. What are my takeaways from this schedule? Well, to start off with, you got 3 really good first games. Kent State, Townsend, I think you win both of those. I think even if you don't have your best day that day, you win, you beat both of those teams. I don't see you losing. And then your first SEC opponent is Mississippi State at home. So really 3 good games to kind of get this offensive scheme, this offensive line going in the right direction. But then immediately after that, it gets brutal. It gets brutal immediately after. You got to go on the road to take on Alabama, on the road to take on Florida. So that's difficult. I also, second takeaway, is I see 3 50-50 games. With 2 of those being at home, 1 of those being on the road. And to me, that's Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Arkansas. Can you win 2 out of those 3 50-50 games? My opinion on 50-50 games, how I feel, is I like to look at who's the home team. I look at who's the home team. What is this game scheduled between? Are they coming off an emotional loss or emotional win? Are they looking ahead? Do they have a huge rivalry the week after? Those are kind of the things. Are they coming out of a bye week? Those are kind of the things that I look at when I look at these 50-50 games, that it can kind of go either way. So you got 3 of them. Can you win 2 out of those 3? I think so. Can you go 3-3 in them? I do believe so. You could. Last thing, my takeaway for this schedule is, if I'm a South Carolina fan, I would really want to focus on the first half of the schedule before the bye week. You got Kent State, Townsend, Mississippi State, on the road at Alabama, Kentucky, and then on the road at Florida. Those 6 games. If you can find a way to go 4-2 in those 6 games, you go into the bye week sitting at 4-2, you're feeling pretty good. Because the second half of that schedule, the first half is tough, but the second half is even tougher. You got to play Tennessee. You got to go on the road to play Oklahoma. You got to play Texas A&M. You got to go on the road to play Arkansas. I know they're not the greatest, but you still got to travel there. You play my Dogs. There's no shot you're winning. And then you got to go on the road to take on Clemson. There's no break at all. There's no easy game there at all. So if you can really focus on the first half of the schedule, go 4-2, and then try and get a win in that second half, though it's hard. So those are my takeaways from the schedule. What's the floor for this team? Well, I think the floor for this team, if everything goes wrong, the offensive coordinator was not a good hire, so not a good fit. Things aren't trending the right way. Lenore Sellers still doesn't improve. O-line is still bad. I think you go 2-10. I think, like I said earlier, I think you beat Kent State. I think you beat Townsend. I don't see a world in which you lose either one of those games. Even if you come out and you have a bad day, you still find a way to win. But it's possible that if you don't show up and give your A game to any of these other teams, you could lose against every other opponent. So that's the floor for the South Carolina team. What's the ceiling, in my opinion? I think the ceiling is, and South Carolina fans are not going to be happy with this. They're not going to want to hear this, but I think the ceiling is 6-6. I think that's winning 4 of your first 6 games: Kent State, Towson, Mississippi State, Kentucky. And I think coming into the second half, I think you can go on the road to beat Arkansas. And I actually think you can go on the road and beat Clemson. I really do. What's my prediction? Again, South Carolina fans aren't going to like this. 5-7. I think this Gamecock team goes 5-7. Slight improvement from last season. 4-8 last year. 5-7 this year. I think that you still have your struggles on offense. I do think numbers are a little bit better for Sellers. I think the O-line looks a little bit better, but I think you still struggle. You've got a very tough schedule, and it's very hard for me to find many wins on this schedule. That's what I do. I go through, I write the schedule down. I can show you here. I've got notes on one side, schedule on the other, so that's why I'm looking over here. I go through and I look at each game, and I tell myself, all bias aside, can I see a world in which they win this game, and how likely is that? It's very hard to find more than 5 wins on the season. I do think you go into that bye week 4-2. I think you beat those 4 games that we mentioned: Kentucky, Towson, Kent State, and Mississippi State. It's very difficult for me to find another win in the second half of the schedule for the Gamecocks. Definitely hard for me to find too. I think it's either going to be on the road at Arkansas or on the road at Clemson. I've already made an Arkansas prediction video, 2026 prediction video, so if you've seen that, you kind of know where I lean. In that video, I did kind of lean Arkansas's way because it is a home game for Arkansas. But I wouldn't be surprised if you beat them. But I actually think you get a really good win, an upset win at the end of the season against your rival Clemson. And hey, I don't think Clemson is going to be very good, so it actually might not be an upset. Well, when we get to that game, you might be slightly favored. I don't think you will be because it'll be at Clemson. I'm just kind of talking crap about Clemson. But I think you pull an upset and you get a huge rivalry win against Clemson to end your regular season. And if you can find a way to beat Arkansas and go 6-6, you'll get yourself bowl eligible. But that is my prediction. That's my takeaway for the 2026 schedule. I think South Carolina's going to go 5-7. Let me know down in the comments whether I'm wrong or am I right. If you agree, if you disagree, if I don't know ball, whatever the case may be, tell me how stupid I am. But other than that, over and out.